Okay, good afternoon. Great to be between you and the coffee break. I'm trying to save the coffee break for you as well, so let's see how well that goes. So I'm Timo Perälä. I'm with the Nokia Open Source Program Office, which is at our CTO office. And I'm also, well, especially in this context, I'm wearing another hat, which is the co-chair of the ORC working group. So, now we established that, so let's see what Nokia perspective on the CRA is. So, basically what I'm going to talk to you about is, well, first of all, what type of a company Nokia is today. I probably... There might be some folks in the room who still identify Nokia with this misconception, so I will correct that. And then what does that then mean when we need to consider CRA and how we do it? Maybe that's the synopsis of the thing. So anybody who wishes to have coffee, then you know what I'm going to talk about, so you can leave. So, company. It's about business to business. So no consumer products anymore, no mobile phones, none of that stuff. Only consumer-directed products are probably wireless LAN access points today. So it's service providers, which everybody knows about as operator, like telcos, enterprises, also hyperscalers, and then recently defense has been one of the new areas, and of course technology licensing. Net sales in 24 was around there. This year it may be a little bit bigger. Just this morning we got a nice message that it's not all going south, so fingers crossed, around 20 billion mark this year. Something that in this context might be a bit not so appealing is that we do have a huge patent portfolio that we need to guard, which is not always, that doesn't always go nicely with open source. So that's one aspect of the company and how we approach open source in general. That says like 7,000 patent families in 5G. Patent family is something that has multiple patents in them. So you can multiply with a small integer number and you get the number of patents. Altogether, patent families are more than 20,000. It says a couple of Nobel Prizes that comes with Bell Labs, but also 2 Emmys. So that's a nice quiz question for anybody to figure out what Emmys Nokia has currently. So the businesses are business is to the businesses, and it's spread across 3 areas. Network infrastructure, which is routers, switches, optical networks. Then there is mobile networks with all the radio stuff, base stations. And then cloud and network services, which is like all the software that goes and runs on top of those 2 other areas. So that's like, gives you an idea that there are different types of products with digital elements that Nokia has, like the CRA likes to call software. And all of them have a different kind of position, if you like, when checking against the CRA. So that's an interesting place. And a few thousand products, so nice task to see that all of them are in compliance and in the right way. Getting a little bit closer to the CRA here is that we approach open source in general from a high-level concept, which we call this openness. So it constitutes of, well, open forums and standards, or ecosystems, our partners, and the kind of openness culture as a whole. So it's not like open source or standardization is kind of a means to, and it's not like the end and important as such. It's part of something bigger and an important part. So yeah, open source, that's how we approach open source. So we use it. You will see later on, a little bit later on, how it is used on a high level, and then it contributes to this bigger target. So this one, we started open source journey in somewhere in early 2000s, and of course, I mean, obvious thing, started off with Linux. That's the easy way. So no more own proprietary operating system, but go to the open source. And then over the years, this has increased, so that like pretty much every year, more and more open source is being used in various products, up until today, when I think it's fair to say that we don't have any products that don't have any open source. I mean, that's no-brainer. We have all kinds of reports that say that 2/3 of software out there contains open source. That is probably true if you average over all the software in the world. In our case, it can vary somewhere between around half of it or a little less, all the way to almost all of it. So again, thousands of products, thousands of ways of building them. So depending on the case and need, the number of open source is then used. Then, of course, not only usage, but being part of the community. So I think here it says that in 2000s we started our compliance program, like officially. Of course, there was some compliance activities before that, but this was now when the process kind of was really solidified, and we had tools to support, proper tools to support. Then from there's been a few, well, let's say the first decade was like contributing and using. Then contribution kind of started to become bigger. And then recently, like let's say the past 10 or more years, we've been also kind of not only contributing, but also founding some of the open source projects and foundations that are out there. Of course, mostly geared towards the telco industry, because that's where we are, but nevertheless. So it's been like a growing journey also when it comes to the participation. So why I'm talking about all these, like what is the company size and what it does and why the open source and how, it's like we do have a definite interest in this health of the open source when the CRA kicks in. So there is a vested interest for us to be a productive, contributing community member, the same way that we've done in these technology-related open source projects. So not so that it's not like something that is I'm searching the word here. Yeah. Let's move on then. Maybe that's the best way to get to this. So the motivation for the CRA, so moving away from Nokia for a while, and maybe I then remember what was the important word that I just forgot. So motivation for the CRA, so it's like, I'm not going to read it, this is just a direct copy from the law text itself, but it's like, as a company, we've established that this is kind of accurate. So there is no denial in that sense. So the reasoning is good. Then here the target, and the target is good. So it's like, and I think I have to say that during the, let's say, a year or so, I haven't really come across anybody who would be saying that it's kind of basis is false or the targets are not good. No, I think that doesn't exist anymore, has not existed anymore for quite some time. So I think we are in a good place in that sense. So kind of the execution and like devil is always in the details. So that's what becomes a bit challenging then. But so basis is good. Let's move on. For a company like us, we are in the business of selling products and services. So obviously our main target here is to be able to put the CE mark on our products. That's what is being requested, and that's what we need to do. And it was already referred earlier that the Commission has learned their kind of ropes. Now they have teeth in the regulation, something that they didn't maybe have in some earlier ones. Now they have. And I think this non-compliance penalties are quite interesting. You saw around 20 billion annual turnover, 2.5% out of that, quickly anybody. 500 million per product that severely is not complying. Sounds like there would be a better use for that 500 million in a company. So better to comply. And I think that's also an interesting observation that in a large company, we have people in all stages of this denial, kind of the psychological curve. Some folks do not believe in this. It's minority, but there are still some who haven't even heard about it. Then there are some who say that, okay, it's in denial. No. Let's see if we ever need to do anything about it. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And then there's the bargaining. So, okay, let's do this like in regular standards, like technology standards. Let's play with this compliance. Let's say we are compliant here, and let's say we are compliant there. Maybe that's good enough. Maybe it's not. So, and then of course, we do have enough people who understand that this is something that we need to take seriously and put effort on, and that's what I'm then going to show a little bit later. But it goes across all the different parts of the product creation and distribution and maintenance. So this is just a random selection of boxes to show, especially internally, that pretty much everywhere people can identify themselves at least in one of the boxes. and CRA touches them. And of course, coming from the open source program office, I have to highlight at least a couple of places where the open source is being impacted as well. And then when we say that CRA is geared for manufacturers and products that are put on market, that's what all is being required. So when somebody says that it doesn't really, or let's see if it impacts or how much it impacts, then this is a useful slide to throw at their face and say that just study it and see if you feel that that's a walk in the park, or should we take it somewhat more seriously. And yes, to be honest, yes, we have done or moved in our journey especially during this year, so that this is now understood, taken seriously, and worked on. But it's not only about the law text itself. When as a company, we need to consider what we need to do and how we need to now act already today. So we've seen here, and it has been referred to, we have harmonized standards coming up. So need to be there in Senelec, need to be there in ETSI. So much fun. Roman referred to 41 standards. Luckily, it's not so many. So Senelec was clever enough to collapse 15 standards into 4. And but then Etsy did a better job, because sen Etsy divided the rest 41 something between themselves. So now we have a couple of more in Etsy, so a couple of new ones, and we are to blame of one of them. So yes, we started this telecom system standard just a couple of months ago. So following the Commission request or encouragement that if an industry finds a harmonized standard, vertical standard need that doesn't exist yet in the program, please start your work, and we did. So yes, it's a fairly large number. In addition to the telco standard, there's network management systems, there's something for routers, something for firewalls. So even if we can kind of remove some of the stuff from our product follow-up portfolio, it's still plenty enough. Then, of course, Commission work itself, expert group, and all other stuff adds to the burden. And then the best practices, here I lump all the other industry activities, including ours, where we are supposed to, and we will produce all kind of good collateral guidance explanation. But that doesn't come from thin air, so we need to be involved here as well. So that's kind of company perception that it's here and there and everywhere, and we need to put people in all those places that are relevant to us. So here is the famous pyramid, and I proudly present the last bullet at the bottom, so the specific vertical for telecom systems. So I think we will be in a good place from the standards point of view as well. Yep, getting closer to open source. So we are proud members of 2 organizations that work in open source for the CRA. First one, of course, this lovely bunch here, that we were actually one of the founders, one of the companies that wanted to kind of take it off the ground, because we felt that we need this, because there was nothing in the open source. I mean, an anecdotal evidence, maybe 3 years ago, I was in one workshop, Commission workshop in one of the Brussels dungeons, where open source people were also in the room, and they were complaining that there is actually, they don't get information. So Commission does this and that and the third thing, and nobody knows about it. And the answer was, you need to be active and follow. So why don't they call us? Well, who do you call? It's like the US president problem. Who do they call when they call EU? So there was nobody, or there was 1,000 of them. So then pretty much like nobody. So we had to have something, and now we have the ORC. And then we also have the OpenSSF, the Global Cyber Policy Group, started a little bit later. In my personal view, has a little bit different focus, because it's more kind of geared towards kind of Linux Foundation, which is the biggest foundation, their kind of internal needs. Of course, some of the members' needs as well, so there's some overlap, but all in all, I would, as a Nokia representative, would see that these are sort of complementary to a large extent. And to that extent that it's overlapping, I think we are in a good place in such way that we do have same sort of members that are members in both. So we can try and coordinate, but I think we could also take an action to maybe a little bit stronger coordinate between the two. That comes as a member of the community to urge that let's take a look. But good work done, excellent work done in a way, and I think that was already established earlier that when things started, there was no access to standardization from the open source, there was no access to commission from the open source, and now we have like a weekly encounter or even more frequent. So, I mean, we have come a long way. Sometimes people don't, and I don't kind of remember it, how far we have come, and we always look at only the things that we still need to do. But I think it's a good, so better place to be than where we were 12 months ago, definitely. Coming from a vendor, a member. So, we've seen also today and yesterday about this timeline, so at least reference to it. So we always see that, okay, it started there, end of 24, then there are a couple of milestones when some standards come into effect, and when some like assessments bodies are created, reporting start, and then it's fully in effect. But that's like the harmonized standard view of the timeline. Parallel to that, guess what? There's the manufacturer timeline, and it actually ends, like I think it was said in a couple of previous presentations, it actually ends at the exactly same second as the CRA is fully in effect. So if people think that they have like 2 years to do stuff, they will be surprised when the end of 27 is approaching, if they haven't done anything in the meantime. So we need to do stuff now. That's what we recognized. We needed to start already last year, and still we think that it's a bit short time to accomplish all that is needed. So what do we need to accomplish, and how we do it? Nokia is in highly regulated business. I guess we are not the only one in the room, but that's how it is. So there's always been a regulation when it comes to the telecoms. It's also highly standardized, which means that we know how the standardization game is played. We know how to influence there, and we have ready access already before the CRA, so we didn't have to work on that at all. We just had to find the place and start to attend. And we also have been, well, based on this history, we know how the standardization game is done, so what does it take to create standards as a collaborative effort, even with your frenemies, as I like to put it, so companies that we otherwise compete fiercely with. So in a way, we are in a very good place as a company to engage with this and start to work on our compliance, which is not the case with everybody. There are industries that are not exposed to all those things, so they are not familiar with standardization. They are not familiar with the regulation that much. Yeah, and of course the bottom line here is that we need to be compliant. There's a good motivation, but we also want to be compliant with minimized cost. And that's a tricky business. So not at any cost, but then we need to understand, and that becomes difficult because it may be different from business to business when the ways of doing things right in context of CRA is actually kind of optimal for the business. So that's an ongoing kind of balancing act. And this is the second last slide. So just presenting like, I think Roman had also much more elaborate way to present how Red Hat has organized, but I sort of saw familiar things there. So we also have similar program, have had it for a little bit over a year now, official, sort of in this structure. So obviously legal is needed. Industry collaboration, that's the standardization and the expert groups and whatnot. Government relations. Another nice, maybe a story about these government relations is that we, of course, had the information about CRA really early on from our Brussels office, but they are exposed to all kinds of Commission initiatives. So the message that came through to the rest of the company is that there is another regulation being built. And then, of course, message was received like another regulation coming. Okay, let's see how it goes. Until, slowly but surely, it was dawning that actually this is not yet another regulation. This needs a little bit more focus. Product processes, that's the same size of a box than anybody else here, but that's a big deal. I mean, the CRA will impact all stages of product creation throughout all the products. And it's like, it's a huge undertaking. And this is why the 2 years that we have left is slightly tight, to understatement of the day. But anyway, so that's going to be a heavy lift. And then, of course, open source is a separate, somehow related to industry collaboration, but it is kind of the fourth pillar here. So that's how we work, and of course there's a cross-project feeding so that we get the big picture right, but also then some dedicated kind of tasks, needs, obviously on each of them. Then, as said, we are prepared. But there are some challenges. The overhead already mentioned about the two groups in the open source. It is still a challenge, but okay. We've discussed due diligence, how to understand it, and what does it actually mean. I think there is still... I would love to find somebody who writes down what it is, and we could all agree that that's what it is, and then we would be doing that. So I'm not holding my breath, but my inbox is open, so please let me know when you have the answer. Attestation for open source, what is it? I just love the workshop. It's timely, and I guess when I put it here, it's a proof that this is something that floats in the air, so to speak. So we need the answer of how this is being done, and to get it right so that it's useful for the whole ecosystem. And then, of course, we do have our assessment criteria for open source that we use, but then what are the arguments then to ensure that those open source projects, that they are reliable? So how can we ensure? It goes with the attestation, but that's the kind of the basic question. And we need to rely on those open source. I mean, there is no way around it. And then, of course, the timeline. So, a couple of fun years ahead. Leaving the presentation with some maybe positive observations. So, the assessment criteria or the attestation thing, if the projects get it right, and kind of maybe that brings more interest towards those projects that get it right, so they become more popular, and maybe there is an interest from those manufacturers that use these projects to be more engaged. It's a possibility. There's no promise, but I like to be optimistic for a change. So yes, and through all these requirements that are put on manufacturer, maybe manufacturers get kind of better understanding of the open source, and then the activity towards the community might become more than what it has been so far. So I mean, there's no promises, like I said here, but there is a possibility. So maybe that's the sort of silver lining that the CRA may have brought with it. And hopefully in 4 years' time, when we all know how it turned out in the early days, nobody comes back and reminds me of this quote. Thank you.